Hello everybody and welcome to another RCT2 review stream. Today we're going to look at Terra Fantasia by Belgian Guy. This was released last year, I believe. It was a gold winning park on New Element. It's got a lot of nice theming and a lot of nice details in here. I'll be honest, I actually didn't remember this one when Belgian Guy sent it to me to review. So I don't know where I was when this came out, but I'm sad I missed it until now because there's a lot of cool stuff to look at. So as we always do, let's start out here at the park entrance. We have a pretty nice little parking lot. Pretty sparse visitation today with the amount of cars here, although he was fighting against the object limit, so that's why I think you see some more sparse areas along the outside. So take that, for what it's worth. So we start here at a pretty impressive kind of castle-looking entrance. Not quite as impressive in this direction. I do like these cool colored awnings that pull out the ticket areas. We've got, looks like 8 or 9 ticket areas here on either side, and then some little spires here. It almost feels like we might have wanted something more here since that's sort of the axis approach. But I do like this entry being on the kind of 90 degrees from the way that you come in, so you kind of it opens up to you as you approach here, and then you can kind of see it on the side. But it's a cool entrance. I have this little piece here, and then these two sections with the little green and red signs for the entry turnstiles, which is nice. I like this little flashing like sparkle object here. Kind of feels like there's some embedded LEDs in that sign, maybe. But this is a cool castle for one. And it's just a cool architectural thing. You have the very traditional large block castle elements here, but then you have all the little finial decorations on the top. And on the backside, you have this upper area. I mean, it kind of feels like you're set up for the Disney train or monorail or something coming through, but we don't have to go that trope, which I kind of appreciate that it acts on its own a little bit. But right when you come in, you get this super cool storybook. So this whole park has a storybook theme to all the different areas. It's very much like the Efteling at the Netherlands, or in the Netherlands. So there's a lot to see there. So here's a little wait time sign with all the different information things. I kind of like how you can walk underneath of it, but it sort of sits there right in the middle. Very first thing that you get to here is the twirling teacups under a pretty unique little structure. I kind of like these pieces and how they work on the diagonal there. I'd almost have pulled out this little tree here so I could see the whole thing a little better on that entry in. But on the whole, the colors work really well here. They're sort of darker, richer colors, and I like that feeling. We have a little play area here, which is sort of a Belgian Guy staple, and done very well. Multi-level with a little carousel here and 2 slides and a little swing set there. So that's kind of nice. And then a little eating area or dining area here with the ordering space underneath, and then stairs up to a rooftop kind of patio with a little trellis here. I like the use of the 2 levels. I feel like it's pretty easy to get into a habit of not ever really considering verticality in your parks. So the fact that the pathway is kind of going up and down to have a little bit of adjustment here is kind of neat with all of that. And this is a cool looking structure. It's kind of got a little Dutch-ish building here, and then these pieces on top. I'm not a huge fan of the path. It's a little bit busy texture-wise, but that's probably my only gripe about it. I'd almost make this upper area look more like a roof, like maybe with some wood planks or some other things going on. But anyway, we're kind of jumping around a little bit, so let's take this a little more of a regular approach. So here's Rapunzel's Harrow Shoot, which I'm not sold on the name, I suppose, but I do like the theming. It's amazing. We have the Rapunzel's Tower here with the vines coming up the whole thing, and then the actual tower on top. Actually looks great. Really, really well done. And then all the different pieces here of track architecture with the catwalk coming out and things like that. And then the little details here, like the staircase that goes up to the actual balloon piece. Super cool. Really, really nicely themed custom ride there. Nice little locker building. And then kind of hidden right behind it is the first of the coasters. This is the Excalibur Station. Well, Excalibur is the ride. That's the station track. But well done here, using the modern Corkscrew Coaster cars, but 7 of them, so a correct amount. And pretty nicely done as far as the lift hill supports go and the catwalks and everything like that. Lots of those good details that you would expect in there. And it looks nice. It's maybe a little bit hidden, I think, is my one complaint, is you got this beautiful ride in front of it, which by all means that should go in front. But on this side, we've got a lot of plants and trees and things like that, and then a pretty hefty station, and then this locker building. So I really can't see this except from the train. Or this other side, so it would be nice just to open it up and make sure that it's visible from the front. Here's a little balloon cellar here, good little detail. Then we wrap around to the other buildings along the front side here. So we have the stables, this is the Royal Stables, carousel here. I kind of like how it comes off of the main show building, so you have these kind of spaces here, like this guy who's sort of unrelated to the rest of it. It kind of looks like some kind of a shop or queue building or a locker building of sorts. And then on this side, you have your queue itself coming through. And again, a nice little cover for this, nice custom cover, just like that one. Good variety too in there. And then as you come through, we have the Spellbound, a journey into a journey of. Let me just click on it. A journey of magic. So that should be expected. We have a nice little cutaway here too, in the first of our dark rides. So we can see from the cutaway we have some pretty cool show scenes here with a lot of detail in them. Really like the theming there. There's a lot to look at. It's not a particularly long ride, but it looks like, based on these show scenes, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scenes, which feels about right. But man, it's nicely themed inside. There's a lot to look at, and I like that it's clearly telling some kind of a story throughout. I mean, the fact that the show buildings are here is pretty cool. Just that there's a variety there, and that they're not all flat and broken them up. They're maybe get a little bit weird on this side where there's a lot going on, but we'll get there. And then here we have this nice little pavilion in the center. Really just from a spatial planning standpoint and plazas and things like that, this is well done. It doesn't necessarily have to be symmetrical across the entire thing, but especially with this kind of a garden space, this is just done really well. Takes up a lot of space and doesn't feel totally cluttered, but feels kind of intimate with these little shorter, narrower pathways. The pathway change for one, and everything else. Would have been kind of neat to see if you could put a band or something up in there, but not quite sure how you do that. All right, so over here we have the Black Knight. This is a Vekoma from 2005. So this is a custom Vekoma Junior coaster, probably roller skater of sorts. So here we have the drop coming off. It's a pretty big roller skater as far as Vekoma Junior coasters go. This little bit kind of reminds me of Okie Dokie at Babylon Land in Belgium. As we come down here to the final helix, turn, and then we're going to brake on the diagonal and then go back into the station. 2 laps, apparently. I didn't notice that. Which is kind of nice, since a lot of these smaller ones do give you 2 laps for the price of 1. It would have been neat to remove the station track here, or the station huts here, as you did with the Boomerang. But it's one of those things that I'm sure when the object limit shows up, there's a lot of questions as to what you have time for and what your space is left. But what I do like on this is some of the queue a little bit. So this is like the knight's tent as you're queuing through here, and you have the different knight characters coming through here. It looks like it's an animatronic knight, which is kind of neat. And then this building down here, you have the different jousting folks on the little horses here, and then over here you've got the different folks here that are in their different spaces. This is a little bit odd to me in that I'm not sure if it's meant to be theming for the ride or what, since it's not super visible from the pathway. I almost feel like if you build something like this, you probably have it also visible from the pathway, considering you're not really going to be looking at that on the coaster since you kind of cruise right on by it at speed. It's a neat setup. It almost feels like it ought to be a show within the park, but I don't really see the queue or anything or just pathway leading up to it. But I do like how this is sort of the castle court. You have your gate here, which leads out into the rest of the park, and then this guy kind of goes around with all the different towers throughout, and then the smaller towers along here that also acts as your park boundary, which I like. It's a nice little touch. Again, some of this theming would be cool to really bring your queue more around it, past it. Being that the coaster is as low as it is, I mean, technically you can get the coaster under there since it's 2 heights, but you kind of want a third one just so you can put a canopy or some kind of a covering over top of it. But to wrap the theming in general, since on a coaster you miss a whole lot of the theming because you're going past it at speed. I mean, this is 30-something miles per hour. So something to consider is maximizing what you get out of your theming. So having queue line wrap around it or things like that really help. Alrighty. So we're going to jump to the other side of the entrance here, this sort of similar area here, and we get into this guy, which is a pretty neat plaza again. So sort of mirroring what we did over here with this little pavilion is now we have a little seating area and this super cool path texture with the different colors and everything, which probably took a long time to get right and to not glitch and be a pain. And then just the trees in general. This kind of has a very Efteling feel to it, in my opinion. Again, weird path. Not a huge fan of the weird path, but everything else I do really like. The way that this kind of juts itself out while still being part of this building is nice. So the seating or the restaurant area here, very Bavarian-esque with all the wood framing elements to it, and then the really bright umbrellas to set off that from a color standpoint. And then on this whole building, I'm assuming that this is just one really, really big shop because there's nothing in it. So this has books here, and I would imagine this is the larger gift shop, which is a little surprising to see a gift shop quite as big as this is. And it's kind of a short height as far as a building goes of this size. And then on this side, we've definitely got a larger covered element. I'm not quite sure why it's covered in this section, like why we have a roof here, or if I'm missing a cutaway that I'm not quite getting there. And then we kind of roll into this landscape, which I think is meant to be artificial, although I'm not quite certain. I mean, on this side, clearly it is with the way the building runs into it, but I'm not quite sure where it stops and where it starts. But this does get us into our first kind of real major coaster. I'm not considering the boomerang as such, but you have this really cool castle entry. Head into that, like cross the bridge on this side, and then over here is the entry for it. Almost seems like that ought to have been the queue entrance there, but I like that you can just wander this space as a guest from a pathway standpoint. But this is Wisp. Wisp is a Vekoma Stingray flying coaster. I'm assuming it's using the B&M track, but I just think there's not really a better solution for some of it. So I don't know if this is meant to be B&M or not, but it is using the lay-down Vekoma track, which there was one Stingray coaster in China. It had this kind of vertical lift that you kind of did almost seated and then put you into the flying position and then went through the compact, kind of raised up layout with the rest. That ride has since been demolished, and I think it was pulled apart to be sold, but I don't know if it has been sold yet. As far as I'm aware, it has not. So hopefully it makes it. But these short little trains are appropriate for that as well. But this is a cool layout. So you have this vertical lift up out of the building, out of the show building, and then just all these great swooping kind of elements over top of the queue line, over top of the exit. This waterfall as well. So you're going to just dust this waterfall on the top as you cruise over top of it. Little hammerhead turn here. Come up, wrap the lift hill. Then we have this sort of figure 8 element here. Speed kept in check just because it's up so high, which I like. And then here we have our big drop down and through the curve and back into the brakes. I think my one question for this one is there's definitely a gigantic show building here that supports this giant waterfall and theming and all the other stuff, but what's in it? It almost seems like this is meant to support a dark ride as well, since there's really not anything that goes in it, because the ride itself doesn't really use the show building except for a little section of station and then popping out the top. Queue itself is way over here instead, and really kind of neat as it goes back through this sort of woodsy area with this little hut and things like that. So I do like that. I just don't know what the show building's for. All right, so good start with a strong first coaster here. Across the pathway, we have the Old John's Tractor Ride using the, I think it was Space K made these guys. And this pretty simple layout, just a little kind of curving space around the farmyard with our barnyard, I guess, with the little rows of flowers and things like that. So pleasant, really cute, nice little stables building here. I do like those little stable roof or stable doors here that open up, like you can see a little horse poking out of that, perhaps. Here's a trampoline ride, which hacked to it actually does something, which again, I appreciate any ride that you have in your park that's just there as a static ride. I always like to see some other ride put on top of it and made invisible, just so that it actually looks like something's going on there, for one. All right, so let's continue this direction. So here we have our little candy house. So this is the gingerbread house, as you might expect from the little candy cane fencing and all the different bright colors and everything. That's a pretty cool little design. And then here we have the Haunted Forest gate. So this is the Haunted Forest area as we come in. First coaster we get to is this guy. So this is Little Witches, an SBF Visa 2007. So SBF is making a bunch of these kind of stock figure 8 coasters. This one appears to be a custom layout, which isn't out of the realm of something that they would do. I think looks pretty good with that kind of interesting layout. So we got a sort of helix lift and then drop down into another helix down, curve around, and then up. Just pop over that little airtime hill there. Cool queue line. Love the little hat. Sculpture wise, I think that's really well done. One comment I would get, and this kind of flows into the park layout comment overall, is that we get into the challenge of thing with a circle of path around it, and that can become a bit of a challenge as you go through. So we have here thing with a circle of path, thing with a circle of path, thing with a circle, thing with a circle, and just a number of bits like this. So you kind of have pathway going like a ton of different ways. So like, for example, right here, heading into this center element, which we'll definitely go see all this at some point, we have this guy, and then also this guy. Maybe it would have just made sense to be a single one coming through, since you really you don't want to overpath the thing, and I think that can be a challenge, especially with as developed as these pathways are with the fencing and everything on either side. But I do like the open space. I will give it that. There's a lot of room between the attractions to breathe, and I think that's okay. I think there's almost an aversion to negative space sometimes, and that's unfortunate because it can be good. It can be a very good thing. Here we have the whirling web. So this guy's got a scrambler with the pathway pieces underneath of it and hides the actual bottom or the base of the ride itself, which looks really good actually. It doesn't glitch, it doesn't look bad, so I'll give that one a major plus. I think that's well done. And then over here we have our Scream and Swing. So this is Gargoyle, and it's another hacked ride that actually operates, so I appreciate seeing that. One of these cars probably ought to be facing the other direction. I mean, in real life, these Scream and Swings have back-to-back facing cars, for lack of a better word, and they swing back and forth. But I will say this is one of the better looking one of these structures that I've seen. I like these pillars with the gargoyle on top of it. Maybe it would be neat to see some of the details like the air tanks and things like that, since this is an air pressure driven ride. But really cool structure for the ride itself, and then the queue line here and queue building is pretty nice itself. Get into our kind of main plaza over here, which I quite like. I've always been a fan of this dark brick path. I know it's not always a favorite, but I do like it a lot. And then this fountain here, it does feel very kind of dark foresty, and then using the different colors of trees here for a little bit of detail and a little bit of color variation and darkness. So cool little structures. So this is the Fenders Village, and that's supporting this coaster here. So this is Werewolf. This is a 2016 RMC that's got a lot of stuff going on here. So we've got some what assumed to be natural landscape over here with a pretty straight giant waterfall coming down into the park space itself. And so a pretty substantial space. We have this cool castle tower over top of the canal or river. I'm not quite sure which one it's meant to be. And then the structure itself here with some really nice just theming details on it, a little sculpture piece here, and all of that. So let's take a look at this because I really did like this layout as well. A couple of the details while we wait for this guy to start is this wall along the back that has the wall pieces lining it, so you kind of don't have to fill the whole thing with these rock elements, which can definitely be too much very easily. I do like this queue coming up the side of the hill a little bit. You have this lonesome little statue off to the side, so you can't get to it, but it's definitely a theming element for this. But I just like the elevation change overall as you work your way to the station itself. All right, so here we are off on the coaster. Steep lift hill, diagonal. If you're going to go steep, or if you're going to go diagonal lift hill, I think you almost always have to go steep because otherwise it just takes up so much room that it feels just way too long as far as the overall spacing goes. All right, little curve off of the drop, sort of wildfire-esque. First drop straight down through an airtime hill and then into this dive loop. Back through the structure, offset a little bit. A couple other airtime elements here. I like this, how it's centered over the drop. Almost put it back to the other direction. Just as another little RMC type element. We have our roll corkscrew here, sending it back in the other way, up and over a big kind of twisted airtime hill. Then we go over this way, through helix, back over the brake run, and around and in. On the whole, I like this a lot. This structure is sort of shares a lot of the overall structure to it. It's compact, but then it still goes over here and does things. I think what I like about this is that it's the first RMC that I can think of where it doesn't have a roll in it. It's just got the dive loop and this other sort of weird dive loop thing. A lot of times the easy button for RMCs is just put a whole bunch of inline twists or rolls in there, and that's what it'll be. But I don't think you need to do that. I think it actually can be done more creatively, and this is a good example of that. Again, here's some upper area of this building, so you kind of have this nice little plaza here, and I do like how this queue line comes in, and you have the open area on the back side of the station, so you can see the coaster scream by you right here as you look out onto that, kind of build that anticipation before you get on. And then one more little honorable mention here for this gate, the big entry doors to the queue line. Super neat, super cool theming, again with the little gargoyle pieces there. A lot to see. All right, and then let's see, how do we want to do this? We're going to cut underneath of the structure here and then go take a look at this guy, which is the Broom Flight. So using the broomstick cars, which I think is kind of a neat idea, and then up the structure. Structure itself is a little bit beefy. There's an object that Kumba actually made for me when I was doing these Star Flyers that is kind of on the corner, and you put four of them together to make this tower. But there's not a whole lot of good ways to make this, I suppose. But first of all, points for using an actual working ride that goes up and down, takes peeps, and all of that. I think that's always a benefit rather than a hindrance. It takes some work and some effort, but I think the effort always pays off because there's motion and there's peeps on the motion. Again, super cool sculpture here. Got our little broom here from the entrance. Just kind of a shame you can't. You can sort of see it here. as you come in. Again, this is sort of a weird pathway thing, and granted, I can sort of give this one away considering that, or let this one have a pass, because this is a 2016 coaster, so it could very well be that there was something else here, but it kind of feels off on its own over here, and this is like a secondary afterthought path. Kind of gets into what I said with an area generally wants to feel more compact and have all the stuff around it, but this one you've got, you know, this one that wraps around on this side, cuts across here, or goes around to this side, and then wraps this one too. So I feel like you could simplify this out by getting rid of this path here. I would have almost taken this Star Flyer and moved it right here instead, or something like that, put it near the path, or even right here on the backside of this, then get rid of this whole bump out area here. And then you could really have these two sides if you wanted on this, or you can almost make this a dead end on this side with the Star Flyer, and then the Rapids ride opens up out onto the lake a little bit, and then you have one way in, one way out, and kind of a circle of area within. Again, park planning can go a lot of different directions. I try to skew more towards less path if possible, than a bunch of different kind of pieces and tendrils that all connect together. But there's nothing wrong saying that you couldn't do it this way. But this is sort of my Parks by Brian, I suppose. Nice little shop or restaurant here with the seating. Again, terrace seating, which is nice. I do like that elevation change. And then let's jump over into this Rapids ride. So we have our little spray here, our sprayers here that the guests can come up and use. And then we have up to the side, this is the Crazy Cauldron, which has some pretty nice little theming bits here, although with no offense, I'm sure there's going to be some kid in that pot by the end of the day. Almost looking for a cool sculpted entrance, especially when you have as many other neat things like this and this as you do. But get to the actual building, or the ride itself here. Lots of cool details like this little island here. So this piece using the grass blocks and everything. So we're going to start off outside the curved station with this vertical lift, which is neat. Nice little hack here into a pretty substantial first drop. And then a pretty short ride after that. We've got a couple of little curves here, and goes around and then into a covered show building, or we'll call it a show building here, with the waterfalls. I like this sort of a diagonal entry, so it's not a little less obvious as far as entries go. And then coming out this big waterfall here, then you have this stair-step waterfall coming down from the source up here as well. Again, Q goes way up as far as elevation goes, and then all the way back down. It kind of helps, too, to make this structure here feel a little less massive. It's a little bit glitchy with the rocks, but you know, so be it. A couple of notes that I would have just as far as best practices go. Generally, when you do a curved station like this, it's meant the ride would be continually moving, so you kind of want to maximize how much of that station you use. So you want to use probably at least 180 degrees of it rather than the 90 here. I do like the boat storage on the side, kind of on the other side of the station. I think that's a nice touch. And then from a lift and drop standpoint, I know there's a variation for real life Rapids rides, so it all changes depending on what the client wants, but I would like to see the exciting element at the end. So you go through all this stuff, you build up to this kind of suddenly mysterious vertical lift hill, and then this huge drop that splashes you down, gets you soaked, and then puts you right back into the station, so you get off with that adrenaline high. But, you know, it can go either way. It really can. I think this has some really great details in it. I love all the little waterfall pieces, all the waterfall or the rapids elements, the little bumpers here along the side. Lots of great micro detailing that is really good. Just nice to see all of it. All right, and then what I assume to be the last, this is the last ride in this area. So another cool little gate entry up into the Haunted Mansion of sorts. We're going to call this one Dread Manor, which seems appropriate. Cool structure. Have our kind of imposing front entrance here, and then a couple other towers. I like the boards covering up the windows on here, and just some of the different kind of crumbly elements to the sides of the walls here. So we have our exit path coming back out, and then the entry coming in. all fenced off, kind of doing its own thing. You get one little peek at the ride vehicles right here, but for the most part, you really don't get to see it. Almost kind of wonder about all of this stuff that's over here, because you've got this neat pile of rocks that blocks this gate that's closed, kind of like something happened and now you can't get into it. From a theming storyline standpoint, I think you probably weren't ever expected to be in it. It is a little odd that all of this is built here and you really can't do anything with it. But being there's like a little gravestone here and this little grave marker, it feels like there's a story being told, but I don't necessarily know the details. But it makes you want to know the details. So that's always a nice touch. And before we forget about it, let's take a look at this centerpiece, because the first time I viewed this, I went around the whole park and then missed this one. And it's worth taking a look. So this in the center here is the Withered Watchtower, which has a ride in it, a little roto drop, gyro drop free fall ride. Low slope stairs, which I always do kind of like. I think it's a nice look overall. But you kind of have to be consistent with it, and it's done here. So that's kind of neat. You peek out the top of the ride with the drop tower before you actually drop back down into it. You have this like all-seeing eye over the top of this structure, and it kind of ties all this together, because you have this magical storybook theme, and then the watchtower that's in the middle, kind of watching over the entirety of the rest of the themes, and then they all sort of approach it from the different sides. So I do like that. It kind of looks like objects may have gotten the best in some of these spaces. The just blank sections of dirt are maybe a little bit strange, but this fountain is cool on this side. And then the train station on this side, so this is the Fantasia Express, which uses the mine train track, and I kind of like that look. It's a little more rustic look than the in-game train. No real issues with me, or as far as I'm concerned, using that. Just a heck of a lot of level crossings here. This is not an America sort of thing. You generally have those limited here because Americans can be stupid. So that's you gotta make sure they don't get hit by the train. But let's wrap back around and let's take a look at Gnome Country. Super cool gnome up top here with his little beard, and so sculptural theming just in general in this park is just super well done, and really helps make the park interesting and exciting. Right off the bat, we get to our launch free fall on this side and free fall drop on this side. So this is grasshopper down and grasshopper up. Kind of a cool storybook type theme to it. And look at these little gnomes here in the middle having their fire and everything like that. Just the mini detailing is super well done. I would almost have thought Gnome Country was going to be a kids area, but it's definitely not. It's got one of the more thrilling rides in the park here that we're gonna get to in a second. I like this lake, just the look around it. And on this side, one more turn, we can see the artificial bank on this side with the wood retention wall and then the little posts and everything. I think that's nice. It makes it feel like this lake is created as part of the park, sort of artificially, and it looks good. On the other side here, we have our little photo backdrop, and this is Josh the cat, and what's the other guy? Russell the gnome. So they have their little sky backdrop, and then the mushrooms and everything, so you can come up and get a photo with them, and it looks like there's it's a stage show mostly. I would assume there's probably photo opportunities afterwards. And then over here we have a nice little wall fence again. Cool little. I'm getting distracted ahead of time looking at the back of house areas. Let's look at the front first. So here we have the mushroom tops for this little eyrie area here, using curve to advantage. So much curve on this. Really, the whole building is one big curve, and it's done well. A couple of entry doors here on the diagonal, and then this one on the side. Just looks really nice. So this is the Toadstool Cafe. A little huts and stuff out front. I really like the colors on this, the green and the yellow, the spots on this one, and the solid red there. The back of house is a little bit strange considering there's parking spaces, but there's no way to get there. There's a fence here, but you're not going to need the parking spaces back there. But there are just the nice details there. It almost would have been nice to see that a little further fleshed out around the park, either fleshed out or left off. since it's a little bit of a hit or miss throughout. But I really love this structure just because of the difficulty to do these well, for one. But there's also some picnic tables on this side if you don't want to sit at the regular tables. And then this nice little fountain here in front of the restrooms that looks like it's going to get you pretty soaked here with these water sprays that come up every once in a while. All right, so let's get over to this coaster. This is Dragonfly. This is a B&M of 2013, so this would have been the second launched B&M coaster, I guess. Thunderbird at Holiday World being the first. Also a wing coaster. So let's wait for this guy to take off here, and we'll take a look at this. I like these LSM stators that are on the launch track itself, so nice little detail there, even though it's probably going to glitch through the train, but I'll take it. Running 3 trains for some reason, I'd probably put this one at 2 trains because there isn't a mid-course brake run, nor is there 2 stations, so it probably just needs 2 trains. Doesn't glitch too badly. All right, come up through an Immelmann, which is the first big element here. Then we have a big vertical loop up into a dive loop. Then we're going to do this kind of cool figure 8 midsection here with this steep drop up back through the dive loop. Dive down into this water splash, or themed water splash, but is neat. A nice curve up over the pathway. The 0G over top of the station itself. And then another one of these figure 8 elements back into the brake run back here. Kind of matching a similar look with this guy and this guy here, which I kind of like. And wing coasters are tough because there's a lot of things that you can't necessarily do. Wing coasters have a distinct feel to them and distinct inversions and elements they're going to be doing. So this one's done pretty well. It's a little aggressive as far as wing coaster design goes. Some of these turns and drops are a little much, but on the whole, I think it looks good, and it's a nice, strong layout. I like the blue and the green. It feels very natural. And then this kind of themed water splash here on the diagonal is nice as well. Got our queue line coming back through here. Not a whole lot of theming on this side. Transfer track is nice, especially because it's giving essentially 2 tiles, one center one, and then a half and a half on either side, just for the wider train. You don't need it, from the game standpoint, because it's just a single wide, but visually, you really want to have that 2 wide thing. But I will say there's another reason to have just the 2 trains is because there's just 1 slot here. There ought to be a second one if we're going to have 3 trains. But again, there's really no reason to be running 3 on this one, so we can kind of eliminate that one there. All right, continuing along, we have our Tumbling Ladybugs, little custom ride, or not custom ride, but I guess it's custom. One of the older turtle bug type rides. A nice little design there. And then another playground as we transition into this side. So this is sort of another kids area on the back end here. Super cool leaves coming off of these trees here. So I guess the trees are the ones that are supporting the leaves. So this is the Tree Trunk Cafe. You can see it here. This is the tree trunk itself. And some of that green roof and landscaping throughout. These little pitched conical umbrellas are kind of a cool look as well. And then this is a nice, more proper back of house area that goes off, and it feels like it's part of something necessarily rather than this one. So I think this is well done there. But that's neat. I like that. It's a cool theme with the tree trunk coming apart on the way up. And then just these leaves here supported by the trees is a really nice look overall. All right, a Manic Mushroom in the middle, another zero wave swinger type ride, raised up on a pedestal, as you see a lot of those to be. They're usually kind of center plaza type rides that give it a little bit of space. All right, and then this guy here is the Toadstool Trams. So we missed this on the way in, but this kind of goes between the 2 sides of this area. So we have our track here, and then it just goes around through some different scenic areas. We have this guy here. Then here's a little scenic element piece here. So it's kind of like a little storybook train type ride as it wraps all the way around to this side. More of these little small gnome pieces, and then another sculptural ladybug here, which I forgot to mention earlier. All right, let's get to the next ride. So this is the next coaster here. This is Red Drink. This is a Vekoma 2011. So this is a Vekoma suspended family coaster. They're kind of newer models of suspended family coasters are pretty interesting. This one kind of has a similar start to Orkinen at Far Up Summerland, which has been copied a couple of places now, including Dollywood, where it has a pretty steep drop into this almost overbanked corner, and then a lot of these low helixes of speed. So you take this whole ride pretty fast through the entire thing, up and over the queue line there, wrap down into this little kind of mine gem type area, and then back and into the brakes here. Two trains have our nice little transfer track here. Train's a little bit bigger than the transfer track, so maybe could have used one more in there just to give it a little bit of space. But pretty simple layout, but a pretty accurate layout. The kind of debate goes as to what train to use here. The real ones do have a little bit of a give to them side by side. There's some pistons in there, but they don't swing. So I tend to shy away from using the suspended swinging coaster. I tend to use the compact inverted coaster instead, but I still use this track because it is more appropriate to the kind of track that Vekoma is using now for these. And then I just hack the other one on there. So I mean, you can kind of do it either way. But nice little drop here into the tunnel right at the start. I think that's a pretty cool, exciting element there. Here we have a Chance Chaos. This is a swirling sunflower. And then on this side, we have the bunny hop with the little carrot. And a lot of the little details there. Here's a carrot patch in the front. And then a pretty interesting little fence design here for the seat walls on this particular planter. And then this wraps back around to the train over here, which I'm not quite sure if this is having a little bit of trouble here. It's definitely waiting for something, but not quite sure what. All right, and then on this side we have the Crazy Caterpillar. Here he is, Mr. Crazy Caterpillar. Again, sculptural stuff that's super, super cool. I really like this windy little pattern for the flowers. It's always nice to see flowers and manicured gardens in that kind of a sense, because a lot of times you just plop down a row of flowers and a row of plants and then a fence and then you're done. But actual kind of measured sculptural garden type things here. This is a Tivoli medium, theoretically, as far as the layout goes. Backwards, I believe, as you come out of the station, generally on the left-hand side here, and then you go up that side. But nice design on that, because those are actually hard coasters to do with the figure 8 element here, but it looks pretty good. So here we have our nice little short train, and then the different elements and some custom supports, which is a nice touch also. Let's keep on moving. We have the Beehive, which is a simulator inside here, but a pretty cool recreation, I guess large sculptural element with the Beehive here and the little bee on the front as well. And then continuing into the kids area, we have a couple of these smaller things. So here's Dippin' Frogs, here's Wriggling Rats, here's Wobbly Worm, and here is Gnomish Balloons through this whole area. So a lot of stuff to see, and they're all working. So points for that. They all have queues, and they can all take guests. Again, they're pretty simple hacks to do, so it's one of those things where I think you get a lot of reward out of actually making them work versus not. And these all have nice little huts, similar shapes and textures and everything, so it really brings the area together as a whole. Also using these original game flower lamps, which is kind of a bold move, but I think they fit here. All right, then we have a disco coaster here. So this is the Woodland Wizard. This was made before Space K had released his actual disco track piece now, so I think that would benefit from it. But this is the way you used to do them. And it looks really nice. Look at this fallen tree here coming out of the rocks on the side. I love that kind of arch piece of the wood and the tree branches coming through. So you really just dive through there. Kind of neat to see all that. This is the Elven Territory according to the sign, which is this little section here. We're going to assume kind of an odd place for the sign, perhaps up underneath of the ride here, especially when you have this one and then also this one. Again, probably would have just pulled away this piece of pathway, and then you're left with a little bit more space to work with rather than something taken up by path. But let's check out this guy. This is Fairy River. It's a pretty darn cool log flume, for one. Have all the trees and stuff growing out of the different elements here. So you have the station with this tree coming right up out of the roof as you come through. And then on this side, you have these 2 or 3 large trees with the little bridges coming between the two, and all the rocks coming up, the little fairy houses and things like that throughout. I almost wish that the ride would have revolved around these a little bit more, since it kind of has this as the main theming element, and then kind of goes over here and does stuff. But it's, you can at least see things a little bit better when it comes out this way. This is kind of what I was mentioning about the Rapids ride the last time, is that it ends with the big drop. So this is a really well done log flume as far as I'm concerned, because you drop down, you have a little bit of a section here, a little bit of a show building presumably, then you come up, do a pretty decent starting drop, and then you go down, have some more theming, go up again, and then you have your big drop finale into the end. I do like that the queue line works its way through this area, so you're doubling up on the use of that theming with queue line and with ride. So that's always a good touch there. All right, as we keep on moving, some more cool pathwork on this side. Almost think it would have been interesting to have this motif copied with the different areas on either side as you came into the Wizard's Tower here, and maybe wrap around the center here, but that could have gotten complicated. All right, so a couple of different paths we can take. Let's go back this way, and we'll start with this guy back here. So this is the a big show element here, or show venue. It doesn't have a name on it as far as I can tell, but huge structure here, and I actually really like this. We have our horse coming around, so this is a show horse, but huge backdrop, pretty interesting to see. And then our back of house things. I like that this is a very artificial looking backspace, and then you have the seating area here, the little show control building here. That there's definitely a peep up in there, which I appreciate. Lots of those sort of details. Here's our flaming house falling apart on that side. Just a lot to look at. Show venues are one of those things that I think often go into the parks as afterthoughts, because it's kind of hard to make them, or to activate them, make them look interesting. And this one I would say is pretty darn interesting. It takes up a lot of space, but honestly that really isn't a concern for this park, because there is a lot of space to do things with. Have a nice little fountain here in the middle. Again, plaza space done very well. Another train station. And then right here we have our Ranger's Revenge. So this is a swinging frisbee ride that has a nice little lowering station. I probably would have made more of the station look a little artificial, so it's kind of has that metal look, and then this is the section that drops down. Nice tower, well done details on the tower with the catwalks and everything like that. Queue line all around it, and then the operator booth here with the yellow, red, and green is kind of neat as well. I hadn't really seen that before. But again, custom ride, working, not that hard to do, so would recommend if in your next park to give those a whirl, and it'll make things a lot more interesting. All right, let's take a look at this ride before we look at the coaster. So this is the shooting ride, so Ranger training course. Kind of neat in this one, because it the theming here lets us know that this is meant to be like you're shooting, whether it's laser gun or whatever, bow and arrow gun, whatever that may be, that you're shooting at the little targets going around this area. Kind of neat. It's a good little idea, and a compact space with a lot of ride track in it, and a lot of theming to see all the different parts and pieces here. I like these kind of rides that are clever. Seems like something you would see at this kind of a park, and it's just interesting to see, and you get a little bit of a peek at all this from the pathway, but you don't have to see the whole thing, which is, I do like that, is that you can kind of see it, get everybody interested, get them in the queue, and then you have more of the ride in the back that is revealed on the ride, so it gets kind of exciting as you continue along. Alrighty, and then here is our observation tower. Huge observation tower. Would have been cool to see a custom finial on top, but object limit means that one's totally fine. just a hacking note here, and this is probably just because I had opened this with some cheats. So if your tower ever does this and spins at the bottom and really doesn't do anything, what it probably is that there are more than one cars down there, which if you have some of the cheats turned on, you can get some of this like this. So we're going to disable vehicle limits here, and we're going to close this and pull this all the way back down to 1. And then we're going to open it up again. And that's all you got to do to fix that. So if that ever happens to you, that's your fix. All right, well, let's step back to this coaster because honestly, this one may be my favorite coaster in the park. So this is Phoenix. This is a mock from 2018. So this ride is based off of the larger mock mega coasters, Flash at Lua World in China, or one at Land of Legends in Turkey. So there's 2 of these right now, and they're both fantastic looking. Basically, it's a hypercoaster with inversions, and the mock train for these mega coasters that has nice, comfortable lap bars can do the whole thing, lap bar only, and make it pretty exciting and pretty interesting. So let's take a look at this ride. Again, vertical lift or steep lift if you're going diagonal. I think it just looks better, and it also works really well to thread this loop, since it's a little bit hard to do this sort of awkward, almost 270-degree drop, but I think it flows pretty well here. So through that loop, up and over the airtime hill, a little trim brake detail there, speed hill here, and the turnaround. Another little trim brake detail there. And through the 0G roll, second inversion. Up and around, cross under, cross over. Crossover is done really well here. And then one more airtime hill up and over the transfer track. This is a cool support that bridges that whole thing, just thinking through the supports. Here's a nice transfer track as well with the 2 spaces there. I have a 3rd train in there. Probably doesn't need the 3rd train again unless you have a double station or a mid-course brake run, but you can take it or leave it. But that's enough spaces. You at least need 1 less than the amount of trains that you got. But really beautiful coaster, really well done supports. I like the colors, it stands out. Really, there's not a whole lot of bright stuff here, so if you zoom out, that's the coaster you see first. And I think that is done on purpose, I hope, because it's worth it. All right, so in here we have our Firstborn restaurant. Pretty substantial restaurant here with some larger roof pieces and then these center tower elements. Kind of feels almost like a Festhaus style, just large, high capacity restaurant, which every park probably ought to have 1 or 2 of those guys. So that's pretty interesting there. Fries and burgers and pizza and buffet chicken and sausage. So a little buffet restaurant there, which is cool. All right, so here we have River Quest, which is our little inflatable raft type water slide. I want to say ABC Rides is one of the brokers for these, and I think Whitewater also offers these, where it's an inflatable tube, sort of like a water slide, but you don't get super, super wet. They use to market these to dry parks rather than water parks. So it's an interesting idea. Pretty straightforward, simple layouts, usually just a lift hill, a couple of helix type drops, and then a final drop and into the splash at the bottom. Probably wouldn't have put the brakes there right away. I'd maybe gradiate it down a little bit so it comes out a little more. But I do like the theming in here that makes it look like, hey, you're getting a big splash. So pretty simple ride, doesn't really have the theming of the rest of the space, but it kind of seems like something that the park would have put in there in the late 90s, early 2000s, perhaps, just as sort of a filler ride, perhaps. Have our little games here in our little courtyard with the shoestring little ladder game here. Have a there's not really a good way to see some of this with some of the trees here, but you've got the skee ball and then just other little games of chance and some other details here. Always good to see the games themed because it is really easy to go in there and just find a standard or more boring game structure and just kind of plop it in there, but this is themed and integrated into the land, which works really well. All right, some more nice architecture, and then some more nice architecture. Again, pathway-wise, we've got this one coming around, so this is a big loop, this is a big loop, this is a big loop, and then this is a really big loop. To be honest, I'd probably cut this guy, I'd cut this guy, so I think this could be fine as a loop, as a plaza here, and then this one could theoretically go away. The building could hang on this side. You could probably activate the water with some outdoor seating and then wrap around to this side, which I would get rid of one of these two and probably keep this one because it goes under the ride. It's more interesting. But that's how I would simplify some of those pathways. All right, then we get back here to the last coaster. So this is Eldar. This is B&M in 2020. So it looks like we've been getting a coaster every 2 years at this place. Alrighty, we have 2 trains. This is probably the one where we could have gone for 3 trains, but we don't have that with the mid-course brake run here. This is easily the biggest coaster in the park. But let's have a look. So we'll get through here and head up the lift hill. Nice supports, but more supports than you need, especially for a B&M of the newer variety. So 2020, you could do this entire lift on probably 4 supports. These kind of supports are more of a B&M from the late 90s versus one that's a little more current. There's definitely some Mako-inspired elements here with a little bit of flatness on the bottom of the first drop, the sort of curved hill there. Speed hill, another larger hill. Twisted little figure 8 type turnaround, up and around the corner. Always try and find a little bit of variety in those turnarounds. Another speed hill, another airtime hill, another airtime hill. Another curving element sort of matching what's going on there. Up into the mid-course brake run. We call this a late-course brake run, more so just because it happens so late in the game, but that's fine. B&M does that a lot. And then sort of the simple Mako finale where we're working around an existing coaster here, up and a couple of different curves here. It looks a little rough here with the banking, but that's game mechanics more than anything. So a couple of notes that I would have on this one. We're definitely flattening out the airtime hills here. I don't think these larger hills need the flat piece on top, but I do think the small speed hills do. This is abrupt. It's not meant to give ejector airtime. B&M hypercoasters can't give ejector airtime just based on their restraint design. So you really want to smooth that out a little bit, just making it a speed floater airtime hill. Like I said earlier, the supports are really well done. There's just a lot of them. You could probably cut maybe half of them and you'd be fine. And then this is looking a little bit odd. I mean, it looks great from this angle, but when you turn the other side, you have the banking that's a little bit suspect. But that's just in-game mechanics that you have to really balance as to what you want for a layout versus something that looks a little prettier. And then I'd probably put brakes on this because if you're running 3 trains, which this can, you want to be able to hold the train here and then all 3 trains behind it, hold 2 stopped, and then have some brake run behind it still. All right, but nice little name, again, sculptural details there with the name itself. And then just a couple other little rides here. We have our boat ride down here, the little elven boats, using that same kind of detail that we saw earlier in the lake with the artificial edge piece. I really, really like that. One of my favorite details in this park, to be honest, as simple as it may be. I think one comment that I would have, though, between coasters is that this coaster and this coaster are basically doing the same thing. The Mach is a hyper coaster, happens to have inversions in it, but it's really based on airtime, which it has a lot of. So airtime hills, airtime hills, airtime hills, twisted airtime hills, and all of that kind of thing, right next to a coaster that's entirely focused on airtime. So it kind of seems like they're doubling up on the thing that on the kind of main feature of this ride. So having an airtime coaster followed immediately by another airtime coaster that doesn't quite do as much, as far as there's no inversions on this one, it's just bigger, is a little bit odd, perhaps, I would say, especially having them right next to each other. I'd almost consider doing a different coaster type. I mean, it does look good. It looks good how it's kind of wrapped around the side here. It looks like it was kind of put out in the open space here and kind of exists out on its own, but those two rides, in my opinion, are awfully similar, and it would be nice to have a little bit of a difference. Well, here's your little path in. If you don't want to pay, just walk on through here. So you need to remember your fencing throughout. But that wraps up the park tour, I believe. There's a lot to look at in here from a sculptural standpoint, like I had said, and just little details. Love these little balloon cellars and things like that. There's just a lot to see in here, and it's a very rich park, really well detailed park. A lot of nice details to look at, and storytelling that's done in some of these rides, like this guy here, really makes you want to dig in and learn a little bit more about it. Look for those details in all the spaces. All working rides, that's a huge bonus for me. Pathway changes is also a nice thing. Probably would see a little bit more elevation change, not hugely so. I mean, you get one here, but maybe change it plus or minus 5 or 6 across the whole park, and I think you get a little bit more variation on that, especially then, so you don't have to suddenly just have the little pop up on the side here. Although I do like that this exists, so it gives it a little bit of variation. But really nice coaster designs also, for one. This is a great selection of coasters as far as choices go, and they're all done really well. So the 3 Vekomas here, the RMC, the B&M Duo, and then the mock coaster here as well. There's just a lot or 4 Vekomas, I guess, with the boomerang. Choices that you don't generally see often, like the Stingray, like the suspended family coaster, like the mock hyper inverting coaster here. A lot of cool choices, a lot of cool designs. So I think this is a really well done park. I'm sad I didn't see it until I got it sent to me this week, but I'm really happy to have seen it and have gotten to look through it. And I will probably be spending some more time in this, looking at details here in the future. So we're gonna zoom in and end on this guy here, just because it's such a nice looking coaster. So, as always, if you have a park or some rides you'd like me to review, or there's some hacking tutorials you'd like to see, or any kind of comments and details, leave me a comment on my YouTube channel. I will be starting to do some more regular streams soon with some build tutorials and some other things like that from coaster layout standpoint, and just general information. So feel free to join in for that. I'll post more details on the YouTube channel before I do so. But thank you very much for watching this. Hope you enjoyed Terra Fantasia by Belgian Guy, and I will see you guys in the next one. So until next time, thank you very much for watching.